The hologram flickered in the center of the command room aboard Unity Station. Admiral Gregory Kane watched it for the third time that morning. His face showed nothing, but inside his chest burned a cold fury. The alien on the screen was High Arbiter Velthorin of the Zenthari Empire. His serpentine body coiled around his seat while his 4 eyes gleamed with poorly hidden contempt. The message was short and brutal. Humanity had 72 hours to surrender all military ships, dismantle every orbital defense platform, and submit to Council oversight. Resistance would be crushed without mercy. The hologram died and silence filled the room like thick smoke. Secretary General Patricia Coleman spoke first. She was Earth's civilian leader, and her voice shook slightly. She asked if the vote had truly been unanimous. Even species that seemed friendly had voted for this containment. Kane turned to face the assembled leadership. He was 58 years old with silver hair and steel-gray eyes. He had been there 30 years ago when humanity first met the Council. He had fought in the brutal battles that followed when the elder races tried to subjugate the early human colonies. He knew how this game worked. Kane told Coleman that the other species had no choice. The Zenthari and Varathians controlled the Council through economic pressure and military might. Any species voting against the containment would face sanctions or worse. Coleman's shoulders slumped. She said they were alone then. Kane's reply was simple. Humanity had always been alone, but they were not defenseless. He called for Lieutenant Commander Nina Rodriguez to join them. The door opened and Rodriguez walked in with confident steps. She was 32 years old and young for her rank, but her record spoke volumes. Top of her class at the Naval Academy. Distinguished service in 3 border conflicts, an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy movements. She saluted Kane sharply. He told her to show them what she had found. Rodriguez activated her datapad and a new hologram appeared. It showed intercepted communications, fleet movements, and coded transmissions. She explained that 3 weeks ago their intelligence network detected unusual activity on Council secure channels. It took days of non-stop work, but they cracked the encryption yesterday. The room erupted in shocked voices when she revealed the truth. This was not about containment. It was about extermination. Once humanity disarmed, the Council planned a systematic purge. They wanted human technology, human resources, and human worlds, but they did not want humans. Coleman asked if they were certain of this intelligence. Rodriguez confirmed they had verification from 3 separate sources, including a defector from Varathian intelligence. The Council feared humanity because humans had advanced further in 30 years than most species did in 3 centuries. They feared what humanity might become if given time to grow stronger. Kane stepped forward. The Council made a critical error. They gave humanity 72 hours thinking humans would panic, fracture, and beg for mercy. They understood nothing about human nature. Coleman asked what Kane proposed, though she already knew the answer. Kane said simply that they would fight. Not on Council terms or by Council rules, but the way humans always fought when their backs touched the wall. They would hit harder than anyone expected. He activated another display showing ship deployments, defensive positions, and strategic assets. He had been preparing for this possibility since taking command. Humanity had advantages the Council knew nothing about. General Howard Price leaned forward with interest. He commanded Earth's ground forces and wanted to know what advantages Kane meant. Kane called on Dr. Lawrence Mitchell to explain. A soft-spoken man in his mid-40s stood from the back of the room. Mitchell looked more like a university professor than a weapons designer, which made him dangerous in ways the Council could not imagine. He pushed his glasses up and approached the display. For 5 years his team had been developing technologies based on reverse-engineered Council tech, but improved by human innovation. They created weapons that could penetrate Council shields, drives that could outmaneuver their fastest ships, electronic warfare suites that could cripple their command networks. More importantly, they developed something the Council did not have and could not counter because they did not know it was possible. They called it the Void Hammer. The hologram shifted to show a device that looked deceptively simple. Mitchell explained that the Council used artificial wormholes for faster-than-light travel and communication. Their entire military infrastructure depended on this network. The Void Hammer could collapse these wormholes, trap entire fleets, and cut off reinforcements. The implications were staggering. Coleman looked at Kane with worry in her eyes. She said he was talking about war with the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Kane corrected her. He was talking about survival. The Council was coming whether humanity resisted or not. The only question was whether they died fighting or died on their knees. Coleman sat quietly for a long moment. Then she stood with her decision made. She gave Kane authorization to implement whatever plans he deemed necessary. Kane nodded grimly. They also needed to evacuate colonists from Council-controlled space. Captain Helen Brooks and her stealth frigate Shadowrunner were the best option for that dangerous work. Price raised an eyebrow. He asked if Brooks was the same captain who extracted 300 civilians from New Harmony while it was under Zenthari blockade. Kane confirmed it was her. If anyone could get their people out safely, it was Brooks. They would also need Commander Jack Morrison and his Ranger Corps for special operations. Rodriguez pulled up another display. Morrison's team was already in position. They had been running reconnaissance on Council military installations for months. When the shooting started, they would ensure Council supply lines collapsed into chaos. Kane turned back to the assembled leadership. He would not lie about what was coming. This would be the hardest fight humanity ever faced. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Every established power in the galaxy would stand against them. But humanity had something the Council did not. Someone asked what that was. Kane's eyes hardened with determination. Humanity had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. This was not a war for territory or resources or pride. This was a war for the right to exist. When it was over, the Galactic Council would never dismiss humanity again. The meeting dissolved into activity as orders flowed and plans began moving. Rodriguez remained behind with Kane as the chamber emptied. She asked quietly if he really thought they could win. Kane looked out at Earth through the viewport. The blue marble had given birth to their stubborn, adaptable, relentless species. He said winning might not happen in the traditional sense, but they would make the Council bleed for every inch. They would show that humans did not break. Humans bent, adapted, and came back stronger. He turned to face Rodriguez. The Council thought they were untouchable, safe in their ancient power and superior technology. They forgot the first rule of war. Never corner an enemy with nothing left to lose. Rodriguez smiled grimly and said they should remind them. The clock counted down toward the Council's deadline. Across Earth and throughout the colonies, millions of humans prepared for the fight of their lives. They did not know if they would survive. They did not know if victory was possible. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Galactic Council was about to learn why humanity should never be underestimated. The deadline came and went without any response from Earth. For the first time in Council history, a member species refused to comply with unanimous sanctions. The Council's response was immediate and overwhelming. Aboard the EDS Valiant, Kane's flagship, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. The ship was one of humanity's newest dreadnoughts, bristling with weapons that combined human ingenuity with adapted alien technology. Nina Rodriguez stood at her tactical station, monitoring enemy fleet movements with laser focus. She reported that Council forces were entering the system. 3 battle groups, Zenthari heavy ships leading with Varathian carriers in support, and a dozen auxiliary species providing screening elements. Kane studied the tactical display carefully. The Council sent a force large enough to crush any resistance, or so they believed. They were broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding immediate surrender. Kane ordered a channel opened. He would give them humanity's answer. The viewscreen activated, showing High Arbiter Velthorin's serpentine form. The alien's 4 eyes widened slightly at Kane's calm expression. Velthorin gave a final warning. Surrender now and humanity would be granted mercy. Kane smiled coldly. He had a counter-proposal. The Council should turn their fleet around, return to their space, and never threaten humanity again. Because if they proceeded, Kane guaranteed they would regret it deeply. Velthorin's expression shifted to amused contempt. Bold words from a primitive species. Humanity's entire military could not defeat one Council battle group. They brought 3. Surrender or be destroyed. Kane replied that they were done talking and cut the transmission. He turned to his crew. All ships were to execute Project Ragnarok. Show them what humans do best. Across the solar system, hidden platforms activated. Stealth mines deployed over months suddenly came online. Dr. Mitchell's new weapon systems powered up for the first time in combat. Meanwhile, light years away, Captain Helen Brooks guided the Shadowrunner through a dangerous asteroid field near the colony of New Perth. The stealth frigate was barely larger than a courier ship, but designed for one purpose: getting in and out of impossible situations. Her navigator, Lieutenant Chris Palmer, reported Zenthari patrol ships in orbit. 2 destroyers and a light cruiser. Brooke studied the display with her mind racing through possibilities. At 35, she had made a career of impossible rescues. New Perth housed 5,000 human colonists now trapped behind enemy lines. She asked how long until detection. Palmer said at current stealth levels they could reach lower atmosphere before being spotted. But extraction would be loud. Brooke smiled tightly. Then they would be fast. Signal the colonists for emergency evacuation. They had one shot at this. On New Perth's surface, colonists had been preparing since the ultimatum. They abandoned homes carrying only evacuation kits and streamed toward designated pickup zones. They knew the stakes. Stay and face Centauri occupation or risk everything on a dangerous escape. The Shadow Runner descended through atmosphere like a ghost with advanced stealth systems, bending sensor beams around its hull. But the moment it touched down and opened cargo bays, the Centauri would know exactly where it was. Palmer announced touchdown in 30 seconds and hoped this would work. Brooke said simply that it had to. In another part of the galaxy, Commander Jack Morrison crouched in shadows at a Council supply depot, watching enemy forces through his tactical visor. The Ranger Corps were humanity's elite trained for operations behind enemy lines. Morrison himself was a legend who completed missions that officially did not exist. At 42, his face was weathered by combat, and his eyes held the hard edge of someone who saw too much. But his hands were steady as he signaled his team into position. He whispered orders into his comm. Teams 1 and 2 move to fuel storage. Team 3 take munitions. 4 and 5 destroy the communications array. Everything blows simultaneously in 10 minutes. His second lieutenant, Sophie Grant, asked what about him. Morrison checked his demolition charges one last time. He was leaving them a message they would not forget. When shooting started back home, he wanted every Council supply line in chaos. Back in Earth's solar system, the battle was about to begin. The Council fleet advanced in parade formation, confident in overwhelming superiority. They had no idea what waited for them. Rodriguez watched enemy positions with cold precision. She told Kane they were moving into the engagement zone. Stealth mines were active and waiting. Kane stood from his command chair. He asked Dr. Mitchell if weapons were ready. In the Valiant's engineering section, Mitchell looked up from his console. All systems were green. The Void Hammer was charged and ready. Once activated, their wormhole network in this system would collapse. Kane said to show the Council what happens when you corner humanity. All ships weapons free. Execute attack pattern Delta 7. Activate the Void Hammer. Space erupted into chaos. Stealth mines detonated among the Council fleet with shaped charges designed specifically to penetrate Centauri armor. Simultaneously, human ships hiding in the outer system using cold running suddenly came alive. Their drives flared hot as they accelerated into attack positions. The Council forces, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. Then Mitchell activated the Void Hammer and reality itself seemed to twist. The artificial wormholes the Council used for communications and tactical deployment collapsed in cascading failure. Ships about to jump to hyperspace found themselves stranded. Reinforcements preparing to enter battle suddenly had no way to reach it. Rodriguez reported enemy fleet in disarray. They were trying to reform, but coordination was cut to pieces. Kane allowed himself a grim smile. Press the attack. Hit them hard while confused. Show them humans do not fight like other species. The battle raged for hours. Human ships, smaller and more maneuverable than Council heavy vessels, struck like wolves, bringing down larger prey. They used unconventional tactics, attacked from unexpected angles, and refused to fight the set-piece battle the Council expected. On New Perth, Brooks was having her own desperate battle. The moment Shadow Runner landed and opened cargo bays, alarms screamed across the Centauri fleet. Destroyers broke orbit and accelerated toward the planet. Palmer shouted that loading was at 60%, but destroyers would be in firing range in 2 minutes. Brooks made a split-second decision. Prepare the drone package. They were giving the enemy something else to shoot at. Shadow Runner launched a swarm of decoy drones, each broadcasting false signals to mimic a ship. The Centauri, trained to follow standard doctrine, split forces to engage multiple targets. It bought precious seconds. The loadmaster called that the last group was boarding. They were at capacity plus 30%. Brooks ordered hatches sealed and get them out. The frigate lifted off just as first Centauri plasma bolts scorched the landing pad. The ship twisted and rolled, pushing engines far beyond rated limits as it clawed for altitude. Palmer warned they were locking weapons. Brooks activated stealth systems but knew they were useless at this range and speed. Give everything the engines have. They just needed minimum safe distance for hyperspace. The ship shuddered as plasma fire grazed shields. Warning alarms blared. Then they crossed the threshold and stars stretched into lines as they jumped to hyperspace with 5,000 colonists safe in their holds. Brooks released a breath she did not know she held. Set course for rendezvous. Tell those colonists they made it. In the Council supply depot, Morrison's charges detonated in perfect synchronization. Fuel storage tanks erupted in massive fireballs. Munitions depots exploded in chain reactions visible from orbit. The communications array that coordinated Council logistics across 3 sectors collapsed into molten slag. Morrison and his team were already moving, disappearing into wilderness before first response teams arrived. Behind them, a critical link in the Council supply chain burned. Back at Earth, the first battle was ending. The Council fleet, battered and disorganized, retreated beyond the system's edge. They lost nearly a third of their forces, while humanity's casualties, though significant, were far less than predicted. Kane stood on Valiant's bridge watching the enemy withdraw. Around him, crew coordinated damage control and refit operations. Rodriguez approached with casualty reports and damage assessments. She said quietly they hurt the Council badly, but they would return with reinforcements. Kane knew. But today they proved something important. Humans would not go quietly. Their technology could match Council tech. Most importantly, the Galactic Council was not invincible. He turned to Rodriguez. This was just beginning. The Council thought one battle would break them. Instead, they showed what human defiance looked like. Now they take the fight to Council space. Rodriguez asked where they strike next. Kane pulled up a star chart showing Council territory. Everywhere. Hit supply lines, military installations, shipyards. Make them fight on 100 fronts simultaneously. Show them declaring war on humanity was their biggest mistake. Throughout human space, the message was clear. Earth defied the Council and survived. Now it was time to show the galaxy humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. The Council's response to their defeat came swift and brutal. Within 1 week, they assembled a force 3 times larger than their initial attack fleet. This time, they came prepared for real war. Admiral Kane stood in Unity Station's command center studying tactical displays with growing concern. The incoming fleet was massive, and they brought new weapons specifically designed to counter human defensive strategies. Rodriguez observed, standing beside him, that they learned from the first battle. They were keeping formations loose to minimize mine effectiveness and jamming long-range sensors. Kane highlighted a massive vessel at the center of their formation. They also brought something new. That was a Varathian siege platform. One of those could reduce a planetary surface to glass in hours. Dr. Mitchell arrived with his face pale but determined. He needed to show Kane something. They made a breakthrough. He activated a holographic display showing weapon schematics. They had been analyzing debris from the first battle. Council ships used a shield frequency they could now predict and counter. He modified their plasma cannons to cycle through harmonic frequencies that should penetrate enemy defenses. Kane asked how long to retrofit the fleet. Mitchell said they worked non-stop. The Valiant and 12 other capital ships were already upgraded. The rest would be ready in 18 hours. Rodriguez checked her data. The Council fleet would arrive in 20 hours. It would be close. Kane made his decision. They would hold at the orbital defense perimeter. Mitchell should complete those retrofits. Rodriguez should get every combat-capable ship in formation around Earth. This was where they made their stand. Across Earth's surface, billions of people looked up at the sky knowing what was coming. Some prayed, some prepared. All waited with fear and defiance mixed together. They chose to fight rather than surrender and now faced the consequences. In orbit, crews worked frantically to prepare for battle. Weapons loaded, shields calibrated, and Mitchell's new systems installed at breakneck pace. Every person knew what was at stake. This was not just another battle. This was defense of their homeworld. 20 hours later, the Council fleet emerged from hyperspace like an iron wall. They came in force with ships blocking out stars. At the center, the massive Varathian siege platform powered up its main weapon, a sight that spelled doom for a dozen worlds. High Arbiter Velthorin broadcast on all frequencies. Humans of Earth, this was their final chance. Surrender now, or watch their world burn. The Council had power to exterminate humanity. There was no shame in accepting the inevitable. Kane opened a channel in response. He told Velthorin that the Council made a fundamental error in judgment. They thought overwhelming force would break human will. They thought humans would choose survival over freedom. Let him show them how wrong they were. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. All ships' weapons free. Engage at will. Show them Earth does not kneel. Space around Earth erupted into the largest battle humanity ever fought. The Council fleet advanced in overwhelming force, but human defenders met them with desperate courage and tactical brilliance. Rodriguez's tactical genius was on full display. She identified patterns in enemy formation, weak points in coordination, and exploited every advantage with ruthless efficiency. Target their command ship. If they disrupted coordination, the numerical advantage became a liability. The Valiant and its squadron pushed deep into enemy formation with upgraded weapons cutting through Council shields like paper. The enemy, confident in their defenses, were shocked to find vessels taking critical damage from what should have been ineffective fire. But the Council had overwhelming numbers. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. Human vessels fought with incredible skill, but were slowly being overwhelmed. Rodriguez reported the siege platform was charging its main weapon. If it fired, orbital defenses would not withstand it. Kane assessed the situation in seconds. Get a firing solution on that platform. All remaining capital ships concentrate fire. Rodriguez warned they would have to expose flanks to the battle line. Kane replied grimly he knew. But if that siege platform fired, none of it mattered. Take it out whatever the cost. Remaining human capital ships formed up and accelerated toward the siege platform, ignoring enemy fire tearing into their flanks. They pushed through screening forces, accepting terrible damage to reach their target. Mitchell watched from his station as weapons performed beyond expectations. The siege platform's shields were fluctuating. If they hit it with coordinated strike at the right moment, they might penetrate defenses. Kane ordered Rodriguez to coordinate firing solution with other ships. They got one shot at this. Rodriguez worked her console with incredible speed, synchronizing weapons targeting across multiple ships while under heavy fire. Solution locked. All ships ready, firing in 3, 2, 1. Every human capital ship in range fired simultaneously. Concentrated barrage of plasma fire, enhanced by Mitchell's harmonic frequency modifications, struck the platform's shields at their weakest point. For a moment, nothing happened. Then shields collapsed and weapons fire tore into the superstructure. The siege platform's main weapon, fully charged, but not yet fired, destabilized. Containment fields failed, and the massive vessel tore itself apart, in a devastating explosion consuming dozens of nearby Council ships. The Council fleet reeled. They never faced an enemy willing to accept such punishment to destroy a single target. Their confidence wavered. In that moment of hesitation, human defenders struck back with renewed ferocity. But victory came at terrible cost. The human fleet was savaged. Nearly half their capital ships were destroyed or crippled. Thousands of brave people died buying those crucial seconds. Kane surveyed damage reports with grim face. The Valiant itself took critical hits. Power was fluctuating and they had casualties across multiple decks. Rodriguez reported the Council fleet was pulling back, regrouping beyond the moon's orbit. Kane said they would return, but not today. They bought Earth time. Mitchell appeared on command deck with clothes scorched from fire and engineering. They needed to talk about next moves. They could not win a war of attrition against the Council. Kane agreed. That was why they were not fighting defensively anymore. The Council wanted war. They would get one they could not ignore. Humanity was going to hit the Council where they lived. Rodriguez looked up sharply. He was talking about taking war to Council territory. Kane nodded. He was talking about showing them that declaring war on humanity meant their worlds were not safe either. They proved they could defend Earth. Now proved they could hurt the Council just as badly. He activated a star chart showing Council space. Morrison's Rangers gathered intelligence for months. They knew where military production facilities were, where fuel depots were located, and most importantly, where fleet anchorages were. Rodriguez observed they could not match Council numbers, so make them spread numbers thin, force them to defend everything, which meant concentrating on nothing. Kane agreed exactly. This battle proved something crucial. Human technology could match theirs. Human courage could stand against overwhelming odds. The Council could bleed. Mitchell pulled up damage reports and casualty lists. Implementing this strategy would require every resource they had. They would commit everything to offensive operations. Kane said he knew the risks. But they could not let the Council dictate terms of this war. If they stayed defensive, the Council would eventually grind them down. Their only chance was making this war so costly and painful that Council was forced to negotiate. Rodriguez studied tactical data. When do they start? Kane's eyes hardened with determination. As soon as ships were repaired and resupplied, the Council thought they were safe in core systems protected by distance and superior numbers. They were about to learn nowhere was safe from humanity's fury. Below them, Earth rotated peacefully, scarred but unbroken. Its people faced annihilation and refused to yield. They lost friends, family, and comrades, but proved something the Council never believed possible. Humanity could stand. And now they would make the galaxy tremble. 3 weeks after defending Earth, Admiral Kane stood in the briefing room aboard Unity Station, addressing commanders of humanity's remaining military forces. The room crowded with officers from a dozen ships and installations, all bearing marks of recent combat. Kane began by saying their intelligence indicated the Council believed humanity was broken. They thought Earth's defense was humanity's last gasp, that humans huddled around their homeworld waiting for the final blow. He smiled grimly. They could not be more wrong. Thanks to Morrison's reconnaissance and Brooks's evacuation of colonists, they now had both intelligence on Council positions and no civilian liabilities constraining operations. Time to show them what human warfare really looked like. Rodriguez stepped forward, highlighting 5 separate star systems on the display. Project Ragnarok Phase 2 called for simultaneous strikes on Council military infrastructure across these systems. Hit them all at once, forcing them to fragment forces to respond. Captain Brooks raised her hand. The Shadow Runner and other stealth ships could get strike teams in position, but extraction under fire would be difficult. Kane replied that was where the main fleet came in. Each strike force would have capital ship support standing by outside the system. Get in, hit targets, and they would be there to cover withdrawal. General Howard Price studied the operational plan. These were deep penetration raids into heavily defended space. They were looking at significant casualties. Kane acknowledged he knew. But if they succeeded, they would cripple the Council's ability to wage offensive war for months. Shipyards, fuel reserves, and munition stockpiles would be in ruins. More importantly, they would shatter Council's sense of invulnerability. Dr. Mitchell activated another display showing new weapons his team developed. They made further advances based on captured Council technology. Their ships now had electronic warfare capabilities that could jam communications and targeting systems. They developed a virus that could infiltrate Council computer networks. One commander asked skeptically about a computer virus. Mitchell smiled. Council species were thousands of years old. Their technology was advanced but stagnant. They had not defended against cyber warfare in centuries, because everyone used similar systems. Humanity developed something completely different based on Earth's history of hacking and electronic infiltration. Once in their networks, it would spread like wildfire. Kane looked around at determined faces. This was the moment defining whether humanity survived as a free species or ended as a historical footnote. He would not lie about odds. Many would not come back. But if they succeeded, they bought their people time, resources, and most importantly, hope. Brooks asked when they launch. Kane replied 48 hours. Get crews ready. They were about to show the galaxy humanity does not just defend, they attack. 2 days later, across 5 different star systems, human strike forces emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. Coordination was perfect, timing exact. The Council never saw it coming. In the Zenthari home system, Morrison and his Rangers materialized aboard a Council command ship, using experimental teleportation technology. Elite soldiers moved through the ship like ghosts with mission clear, capture the vessel intact and download databases. Morrison ordered Team 1 secure the bridge. Team 2 engineering. 3 and 4 handle database access. They had 15 minutes before response forces arrived. Rangers moved with practiced efficiency, with weapons modified to be silent and armor designed to defeat Council sensors. Zenthari crew members fell before they could sound alarms. Within 8 minutes, Morrison stood on the bridge of an enemy command ship, with systems under human control. Lieutenant Grant worked her portable terminal downloading terabytes of classified information. She told Morrison he needed to see this. They had files on war crimes, genocide operations, planned extermination campaigns against a dozen species. Morrison looked at data scrolling across her screen with his face hardening. Download everything. The galaxy needed to see what the Council really was. In another system, Brooks guided Shadowrunner through a massive Council shipyard. The stealth frigate's cargo bay loaded with specialized munitions designed by Mitchell's team. Palmer reported approaching target zone, reading 4 capital ships under construction and at least 20 smaller vessels. Brooks studied the layout. Deploy mines along dry docks, set them for remote detonation. Hit the fuel depot on the way out. Shadowrunner drifted through the shipyard like a phantom with advanced stealth systems, rendering it invisible to Council sensors. One by one, they planted explosives on critical structures, enough firepower to cripple the facility for months. Palmer confirmed last mine deployed. Getting them clear now. As Shadowrunner accelerated away, Brooks activated detonators. Behind them, the Council's largest military construction facility erupted in a chain of devastating explosions. Half-finished warships tore themselves apart. Dry docks collapsed. The facility that built weapons to threaten Earth became a monument to human defiance. Meanwhile, Rodriguez led a squadron of destroyers in lightning raid on a Council fuel depot. The Valiant and 3 other ships jumped in at maximum range, launched attack, and were already preparing to jump back before defenders could respond. Rodriguez reported target locked. Firing solution confirmed. All ships' weapons free. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space, each carrying Mitchell's new warheads. They penetrated depot shields and detonated inside fuel storage tanks. The resulting explosion was visible from 3 light-years away. Rodriguez ordered jump now, and human ships vanished back into hyperspace before reinforcements could arrive. Across 5 systems, the pattern repeated. Human forces struck hard and fast, inflicting devastating damage before disappearing. Council commanders scrambled to respond, but by the time forces arrived, raiders were gone, leaving only destruction. But real victory came from Morrison's captured data. Within hours of his team's extraction, information was broadcast across every communication channel humanity could access. The galaxy watched in horror as evidence of Council crimes was laid bare. Species that were subjugated and told it was for protection. Worlds strip-mined with populations enslaved. Entire civilizations erased when they refused to submit. The Council's carefully maintained image of benevolent leadership shattered. Back on Unity Station, Kane watched Galactic response with grim satisfaction. Neutral species that stayed silent were now openly questioning the Council. Some even offered covert support to humanity. Rodriguez reported the Council was trying to suppress information, but too late. It spread to every corner of the galaxy. They could not stop it. Morrison appeared on view screen from his infiltration ship. The captured data also included tactical information, fleet deployments, defense strategies, communication protocols. They essentially downloaded the entire military playbook. Kane allowed himself a small smile. Good work, Commander. That information would be invaluable for what came next. Morrison asked, what does come next? Kane's expression hardened. They bloodied Council's nose and exposed their crimes. Now finish this. Take war to the Zenthari homeworld itself. Show them no one, not even the most powerful empire in the galaxy, was safe from Earth's fury. Rodriguez pulled up tactical data. The Zenthari home system was the most heavily defended location in Council space. Fleet strength there was 10 times what they faced at Earth. Kane said he knew, but they had something the Council did not expect. Mitchell's ultimate weapon, the one saved for the right moment. And they had Council's own tactical data, which meant they knew exactly where to strike. Mitchell appeared on another screen. The Void Hammer. Mark II was ready. This version did not just collapse artificial wormholes. It could create sustained disruption field that would trap entire fleets in normal space. Rodriguez understood. Once trapped, they could not escape and could not receive reinforcements. They would have Council at their mercy. Kane confirmed exactly. This was it. The final gambit. Throw everything at the Zenthari homeworld. Force the Council to either negotiate peace or watch their capital system fall. Brooks cut in. Even if they won that battle, they would take massive casualties. Might not have enough ships left to defend Earth if other Council species continued war. Kane acknowledged she was right. This was all or nothing. But they proved the Council could be beaten. They showed the Galaxy Council's true nature. They demonstrated humanity would never stop fighting. If they could break the Zenthari, the rest of the council would collapse. He looked at each officer in turn. He would not order anyone on this mission. Volunteer only, but he believed this was their best chance to end war on their terms. Responses came immediately. From Morrison, Brooks, Rodriguez, Mitchell, and every other commander. All volunteered before he finished speaking. Kane nodded with pride evident in his eyes. Then they had work to do. Prepare the fleet. In 1 week assault the Zenthari homeworld. One way or another, this war ends there. The human fleet assembled at the edge of Zenthari space was the largest armada humanity ever mustered. Every combat-capable ship from massive dreadnoughts to quick-strike frigates gathered for what everyone knew would be the decisive battle of the war. Admiral Kane stood on Valiant's bridge looking out at the assembled fleet. Behind him, Rodriguez coordinated final preparations while Mitchell ran last-minute checks on the Voidhammer Mark II. The weapon was untested in combat, but represented humanity's best hope for victory. Rodriguez announced all ships report ready, awaiting orders to jump. Kane opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice was calm, but everyone heard the steel beneath. This is Kane to all ships. In moments, they were jumping into the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. The Zenthari never been successfully attacked on their homeworld. They believed themselves untouchable, secure in power and protected by vast fleets. He paused, letting words sink in. They were wrong. Today, humanity was showing them and the entire galaxy that no one was safe from consequences of their actions. Today, proving humanity does not just survive. They prevail. Another pause. He would not pretend this would be easy. They were losing friends today. Good people dying so the rest of humanity could live free. But remember this. They fought not just for themselves, but for every species the Council oppressed. They fought for the idea that no empire, no matter how powerful, had the right to crush those weaker than themselves. All ships prepare to jump. May whatever gods you believe in watch over us all. Kane out. Space twisted as the human fleet entered hyperspace, heading toward final confrontation. The jump would take 4 hours for crews to make peace, check weapons, and prepare for what was coming. Rodriguez worked through tactical scenarios with her team, planning for every contingency she could imagine. Brooks made sure evacuation protocols were ready in case they needed to extract ground forces. Morrison checked his Ranger's equipment for the 10th time. Mitchell ran simulation after simulation on the Voidhammer. Through it all, Kane stood silently on his bridge, thinking of the path that brought them here. 30 years since first contact. 30 years of being dismissed, underestimated, and threatened. Now it all came down to this single battle. The fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Zenthari home system, and what they saw took their breath away. The enemy fleet was enormous, with hundreds of capital ships and thousands of smaller vessels arrayed in perfect formation. Orbital defense platforms bristled with weapons. Fighter wings darkened space around the planet like swarms of angry insects. Someone whispered, "Dear God," on the command deck. Rodriguez ran numbers with her face pale. They were outnumbered 15-1. Firepower advantage was even greater. Kane studied the display with calculating eyes. Then it was good they were not planning conventional battle. He asked Mitchell if the Voidhammer was ready. Mitchell confirmed charging now. Needed 3 minutes to reach full power. Kane replied they would buy 3 minutes. All ships attack formation Delta 9. Drive straight for their command cluster. Make them think they were attempting decapitation strike. The human fleet accelerated, charging directly at the heart of Zenthari formation. It looked like suicide, which was exactly what Kane wanted them to think. The Zenthari fleet moved to intercept, with formations shifting to envelop and destroy the audacious human attack. High Arbiter Velthorin himself commanded defense from his flagship, confident that primitive humans were about to be crushed. Rodriguez observed they were falling into the trap, concentrating forces exactly where humanity wanted them. First exchanges of fire were devastating. Human ships took terrible damage as Zenthari weapons tore into their ranks, but they pressed on, accepting punishment, drawing more enemy fleet into engagement zone. Mitchell called out 2 minutes, his voice tight with stress as he monitored Voidhammer's power buildup. Kane watched as his ships died, each one buying precious seconds with their sacrifice. The Zenthari closed in for the kill, confident in overwhelming superiority. They had no idea what was about to happen. Mitchell announced 1 minute. The human fleet was taking appalling casualties but accomplished their goal. The Zenthari fleet was tightly clustered, with all forces concentrated in relatively small volume of space. Mitchell said 30 seconds. They were ready. Kane took a breath. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. Activate the Void Hammer. All ships prepare for emergency maneuvers. The device activated and space itself seemed to scream. Artificial wormholes the Xanthari used for faster-than-light travel collapsed in cascading failure. But more than that, the Void Hammer created sustained disruption field that locked down hyperspace across the entire star system. No one could jump to hyperspace. No one could escape. The Xanthari fleet was trapped. Realization hit the Xanthari like physical blow. Confidence evaporated as they understood the trap. Cut off from reinforcements, unable to retreat, and suddenly facing an enemy willing to trade ships one for one if it meant victory. Kane said coldly, "Now show them what human warfare looks like. All ships full offensive. Target capital ships. Destroy everything." The human fleet, battered but unbroken, turned full fury on trapped Xanthari. Mitchell's weapons cut through shields. Rodriguez's tactical brilliance exploited every weakness. Brooks's stealth ship struck from unexpected angles. Morrison's Rangers, having infiltrated orbital platforms, sabotaged targeting systems at critical moments. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died by dozens but took Xanthari vessels with them. For every capital ship humanity lost, 3 enemy dreadnoughts exploded. Xanthari fought with increasing desperation as they realized they faced defeat in their own home system. Finally, as human fleet pressed attack toward Xanthari flagship, Velthorin's resolve broke. He broadcast on all frequencies with voice no longer arrogant but pleading. "Ceasefire. We surrender. In the name of the Galactic Council, we surrender." Kane let the words hang in space for a long moment before responding. "High Arbiter, you should have learned this lesson 30 years ago. Humanity does not surrender, and we do not accept surrender of those who tried to exterminate us." Velthorin's voice became frantic. "What do you want? Name your terms." Kane replied, "Unconditional surrender of all Council forces, immediate withdrawal from all occupied human territories, full disclosure of all war crimes to be judged by neutral parties, and most importantly, complete dissolution of the Galactic Council as it currently existed. A new galactic government would be formed where no single species or alliance could dominate others." Velthorin protested those terms were impossible. "The Council existed for thousands of years," Kane said flatly. "Then you have 5 minutes to make the impossible possible, or we resume fire and do not stop until every Xanthari ship is debris. Your choice, High Arbiter." The wait was agonizing. Kane watched the clock count down, knowing every second brought them closer to following through on his threat. Around him, crew held their breath. With 30 seconds remaining, Velthorin's voice came back. "We accept your terms. All Council forces will stand down and submit to human authority, pending final negotiations." Kane closed his eyes for just a moment, feeling the weight of what they accomplished. "Ceasefire. All ships maintain formation but hold position." The silence that fell over battlefield was profound. Both fleets hung in space, damaged and bloodied, the Xanthari defeated and humans victorious at terrible cost. Rodriguez approached Kane with her face showing strain of hours of combat. "We did it, sir. We actually did it." Kane nodded slowly. "At what cost?" "They lost over half their fleet. Thousands of good people died to make this happen." Rodriguez replied firmly, "They did not die in vain. They died so humanity could live free, so no one would ever again dismiss them or threaten them with extermination." Mitchell appeared on bridge, exhausted but smiling. They were receiving communications from neutral species across the galaxy, offering support for forming new galactic government, one based on equality rather than domination. Brooks checked in from Shadowrunner. They evacuated last of Morrison's Rangers from orbital platforms, all human personnel accounted for. Morrison's voice came through. The data they captured was being broadcast across every channel. The galaxy was seeing exactly what the Council really was. No going back to the old order now. Kane looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth, of all humans who fought and died to reach this moment. They started as dismissed junior species barely tolerated by ancient powers. Now they shattered the greatest empire in the galaxy and reshaped galactic politics forever. He ordered set course for Earth, time to go home. The human fleet limped back toward their homeworld, battered but victorious. Behind them, the Xanthari system burned. Ahead lay a new future where humanity would never again be dismissed or threatened. The journey home took 3 days. When they finally arrived in Earth's solar system, they found something waiting. Ships from a dozen neutral species had gathered, with captains requesting permission to speak with Kane about forming new galactic government. On Earth itself, billions of humans looked up at the sky knowing they survived, knowing they won. knowing humanity earned its place among stars not through submission, but through sheer determination and courage. Kane stood on Unity Station, looking down at the blue marble that gave birth to their species. Rodriguez stood beside him along with Mitchell B.,